Hey, I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera show. You know, fall is in the air and I'm loving every minute of it. And because of that, it's just great to be outside. You know, tonight I'm going to give you some ideas for 3 great recipes that when your husband decides to get on the Big Green Egg or the Komodo Joe or the Weber or whatever kind of grill you've got in the backyard, you're going to want to have something really scrumptious so that he doesn't have all the limelight. So tonight we're making a company rice casserole. I'm doing a cheese pudding and then a mushroom dish that's scrumptious. So let's get started on the rice. So what I have here is a stick of butter and we are going to get that heated just to get it melted down. And you know, Fresh Market is so good to the VeryVera show and I love to try their products. I've always used Uncle Ben's rice, but I've tried their brand of long grain rice and it is just great. So I'm going to be using that tonight. So as this butter gets melted in the pan, I'm just going to add the rice to it. And this is a cup of long grain rice. And basically what we're going to do here is just get this rice good and browned in the pan. So that's the first step to this. And one tip that I would like to give you, I know when we're at home having company and there's lots of things going on, husband's on the grill, I'm trying to get the appetizers and the things ready. You know, it's great when you look at all the things that you're going to be preparing and figure out how you can get started on the next thing while something like this is cooking on the stove. So let's move down here and I'm going to get started actually on the cheese pudding recipe that we're going to make next. I've got a loaf of white bread and this is actually a buttermilk bread that I thought looked really good. And we're going to take the crust off of each of these pieces of bread. And I want to just kind of keep an eye on that rice as it's cooking down. You know, for me, rice is a really great go-to side dish. And I get so tired of things that are, you know, too sticky or have too much in them. So I hope you're really going to like this recipe because it's light and fluffy and colorful as well. So we're just getting that crust and I can hear that rice cooking. It's going to be nice and golden brown. And you know, if you're planning to make dressing anytime soon, you can put all of these crumbs stowed away somewhere. So let's move back down here where I've got the rice cooking down. And you'll be able to see really quickly when it's getting just kind of a nice golden brown color. You know, I'm enjoying cooking with wooden spoons again because when I was at work at VeryVera, the health department never let you use a wooden spoon and it's absolutely my favorite. I love the way it feels and love the way it stirs in the pan. So this is just about ready. So what we're going to add to that, I've got some hot water that I just heated in the microwave. And you know, this recipe is so old that it actually called for bouillon cubes, which you can't even hardly find in the grocery store anymore. So this is just the beef bouillon base, and a teaspoon of that is equal to 1 cube of bouillon. So this is 5 teaspoons in 2 cups of water. All right, and as you can see, those granules of rice are getting really toasty. And this part you have to be a little bit careful because when we start adding the water to this, it might spew a little bit. There it goes. And so we're going to just add the 2 cups. And I've turned the heat off at this point. And if any of the bouillon is left in the container, just be sure to get that out. It's going to have a really nice flavor. All right, so I've got a 1.5 quart casserole dish. And I'm going to spray this and then I'm going to transfer this into the pan. We're going to put it in a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes and then when we come back, these wonderful ingredients in front of me are going to get just tossed in there with it and we'll be back in the oven. So come back after the break. I'll be getting this in the oven and ready to go and we're going to have our first dish ready. just pretend for a minute that there are these wonderful ribs or maybe a Boston butt or even some grilled shrimp on the grill. Well, what could be better than a cheese pudding as a side dish for that? So that's what we're putting together, and hopefully maybe you'll think about this instead of grits sometime when you're looking for a great side dish. So before the break, we cut the crust off the bread, and now I've just softened half a stick of butter, and we're going to spread that evenly on these 8 slices of bread. And you may think, well, why didn't she just melt that and just brush it on melted? Well, one of the reasons is if you just lightly soften it, it's not going to really penetrate the bread the entire way, because you want to maintain some of that oomph from the bread. You don't want it to be really soggy. So this, when it gets in the pan, won't just completely absorb everything and turn mushy. It's going to have a really nice, almost a souffle-like consistency. All right, so we've spread that, and I've just got just a little spatula. It works out really great to do that. And now we're going to prepare the pan, and this is about a 1.5 quart casserole dish. And for a side dish, you could probably get 8 servings out of this. If you were using it for brunch with maybe some fresh fruit or some breakfast meat, I would say 4 probably from that. So we're going to cut each of these pieces into 4ths, and now we'll start layering this in the pan. And so essentially what you want to do is you're going to start with the bread and you're going to end with the cheese, and we're just going to do layers. And you know, it's great to do something like this when you've got some bread that's too stale to make a sandwich. You could make one of these and pop it in the freezer. All right, so we're just about ready to put the cheese, and I've used a mild cheddar, or you could use an American cheese, because you don't want the cheese itself to overwhelm the flavor. All right, so I've grated some mild cheddar cheese, and we'll put half of that on here. And you know, grits has become the new, it's almost like grits became potatoes, and I'm trying to think of ways to do other things as side dishes that maybe would be where you would use grits before. All right, so we've got a layer of cheese, and now we're going to do the bread again. And this is something that children will eat too. Maybe instead of macaroni and cheese, this would be a great side dish for children, great for a brunch, as I said, and it can be almost a main dish if you wanted to put some other vegetables in with it. It's just a great, easy recipe, and it's not one that you have to do the day before and let it sit in the refrigerator overnight. So you could get that made this afternoon and be ready to go. All right, so now let's put the rest of the cheese. And then to the milk, I've got whole milk that I'm using for this, 2.5 cups. I'm going to add dry mustard, some beaten eggs, and salt and pepper. Just make sure that's evenly distributed there. All right, so we're going to add the eggs to the milk, the dry mustard, a little bit of salt, about a teaspoon of salt, and then a little bit less on the pepper. Just mix that through, lightly beaten. You don't want to mix it too much. All right, we're going to pour this over, and then this is going to go in a 325-degree oven for about 40 minutes. And like I said, just pretend that you've got something wonderful on the grill, and this is going to go with us. So the rice casserole will be coming out. We're going to be adding those yummy ingredients to that. Just about the time for me to change that temp and put this in. So come back with us after the break. I'm going to get the next step of the rice done, and then we'll get started on the mushrooms. Hey, thank you so much for coming today. You know, just give us your time. You know, a dinner party is always so much fun, and if you should have to leave the table for any reason, try to do it with as little interruption as possible. When you get ready to get up from the table, the gentleman at the table should always stand, acknowledging that the woman is going to leave the table. The other thing that's important is to place your napkin in the chair, indicating that you plan to return to the table. Upon return, when you go to sit down, that same gentleman is going to stand up again, acknowledging that a lady has come back to the table. And you know, during a dinner party, you're always wondering whether or not it's time, if everyone's finished and if it's appropriate to get up. But the way that you know that it's appropriate for you to be able to get up and leave the table is when the hostess puts her napkin on the table. That indicates that the meal is over and you can get up at any time. Hey, welcome back, and I have just pulled that company rice casserole out of the oven, and it already smells great, and there really isn't anything in it but rice and beef bouillon. But I'm going to lift the cover off, and I'm just going to take a fork and kind of lightly toss it around, and remember it's only halfway done. Now we're going to add a half a cup of sliced almonds, a half a cup of green onions, and a half a cup of chopped celery. Now it's really going to start smelling great. So you just want to take a fork and just lightly mix that together. And wouldn't you love to have this as a side dish? I tell you, I love nuts in any food dish. And this is just a really great crunch, and the celery, you know, really stays nice and crunchy as well. So it's light, it's not heavy, it's perfect for any dish. Remember, you're pretending what's on the grill tonight, so whatever you're dreaming about, this is going to be great with it. So I'm just going to cover that right back up and walk over to the oven and get this back in the oven for an additional 30 minutes. All right, that cheese pudding looks really good too. All right, let's get started on the mushroom dish, and I'm sure you're probably thinking everything she's making is with bread and eggs and milk. You know, certainly you wouldn't do all three of these at once, but I've hopefully given you some variety and things that you can put together when you're cooking meat outside on the grill. So I've got 2 tablespoons of butter melting in this pan. And I've already started slicing up the mushrooms, and I love to leave them really nice and chunky. But I wanted to just remind you again that you don't wash mushrooms. You just take a paper towel and you just want to dust them off. And you know, a lot of times a recipe will call for canned mushrooms, and you can always substitute the fresh. So I'm just going to get these sliced up, and then we're going to get those mushrooms cooking in the butter. I'll go ahead and put those in. Turn that up just a little bit. And while that's cooking, we're going to get the rest of the casserole put together. You know, a lot of times people say, how do you get it all done? You know, Vera, how did you do all those events all those years and have everything done on time? And you know, honestly, a lot of things can be held. So when you're making a dish like this, one of the reasons I love to do casseroles when my husband is cooking outside on the grill is that you have control over when that's going to be done. You know when the dish is going to be ready. So this way, if you get this cooked in advance, you can put it in a warming drawer. But when that meat is ready to come off that grill, you've got control over when the rest of it's going to be done. So we're just going to let those cook down. Now I'm going to spray this pan, and you may be thinking, why is she putting it in a roasting pan? Well, I'm going to show you a way to make it and use it where it's not like a casserole. So tonight, I'm using an oatmeal bread in this recipe, and you don't have to be as fancy about how it's prepared. And I'm just going to take 4 of the slices and just pull them apart into little pieces and cover the bottom of this pan. If you want to use it as a casserole, of course, you might want to pay attention to what sort of casserole dish you're using so you could take it directly to the table. And honestly, these breadcrumbs I would probably end up eating myself. This is one of my favorite breads. Anything that's got a little bit of a crunch or heaviness to it. All right, so I've got that done. And what we're going to be adding to the mushrooms as they're cooking down is onions and celery. Ooh, I've got one mushroom that didn't get cut. Save the day. Maybe I'll let that sit on the top, be a garnish. All right, so these are cooking down, and we're going to add to that the celery, onions, and bell pepper. And you can substitute red pepper if you prefer. So while that's cooking down a little bit more, and you know, this is a dish that you probably haven't seen used too often, and I love to reminisce about where I got the recipes, and actually lived in Madison for a period of time and had a friend there who gave me this recipe, and every time I make it I think about her. All right, I've got a cup and a half of milk. I'm going to add to that 3 eggs that were lightly beaten. And here again, a lot of these have the same characteristics, but they're not going to be served all on the same night. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of pepper and salt to this. And this recipe also has mayonnaise. So as this continues to cook down, and don't you love how you can see the mushrooms? Come back with me after the break. We're going to check on the other 2 casseroles. Then I'm going to show you a wonderful way to serve this other than a casserole dish. Welcome back, and you're just in time to see me pull this wonderful cheese pudding out of the oven. Oh my goodness, this is just gorgeous, and it would be perfect for a brunch or, you know, any sort of thing, but tonight we're having it as a side dish instead of grits. So what I've got going on over here is I've got a portobello mushroom, a great big one, and I've put it on the George Foreman, but you know, honestly, that could go on the outside grill as well. So while that's kind of grilling off, let's take a plate that I have put some fried shrimp, and like I said, this dish can substitute for grits. Just look how creamy and wonderful that is. And on a plate with some shrimp, whether it's grilled or fried, that would be fantastic. And then to top it off, Fresh Market has all of these wonderful preserves, and I'm just gonna kind of lace it with fig preserves. And that is a scrumptious meal right there. All right, where I've got some chicken, remember that wonderful rice dish? Just look how beautiful that is. And this is gonna just be great on a plate with some sort of chicken dish or pork. And see how pretty and light and fluffy that is? I love that. So now let's check on this mushroom that looks fantastic. And I'm going to take it to a plate. Remember you were supposed to be dreaming about ribs? Your dreams came true. I've got ribs on the plate. So I've got some ribs that cooked on the slow cooker that just look wonderful. And remember that little mushroom that didn't get sliced? He came to life again on the plate. Now for this fantastic mushroom casserole. Again, you can do this as a casserole, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a really yummy spot. Let me grab that pot holder, and I'm going to fill the cavity of this portobello mushroom with the mushroom casserole. Now look at that. I bet you've never had that at somebody's house before. You know, say goodbye to stuffed potatoes, because now you've got stuffed portobello mushroom. And to that, we are going to put some grated Parmesan cheese. You know, and you can get sloppy with this kind of thing too. We could even take the mushroom and pull it in half and kind of do it that way too. So look at what we've come up with tonight. We've got a wonderful plate with shrimp, with a delicious cheese pudding that has a beautiful sauce. We've got a rice dish that would be great with steak or seafood or anything else. And then a casserole that can also double as a stuffing to go in a portobello mushroom. So as you think about your menus for this fall and the things that you might be doing outside on the grill, I hope that you will keep in mind side dishes that you can have control of, something that you can time when it comes out of the oven, put it in a warming drawer, and then when those wonderful ribs or whatever you've cooked on the grill come out, you are ready to go with the side dish. It makes entertaining so much easier when the hostess can be herself and not be rushing around with what to do. So as we go along, I want you to remember that all of our recipes are on NBC26.tv. And if you've got a suggestion for me, if you have a recipe that you would like for me to try, I hope you'll email me at vera@NBC26.tv. That's vera@NBC26.tv. I love to get emails. I love to have the comments and have had some really great recipes submitted. So I hope you'll do that. But all fall, as we work together on these wonderful dishes, I hope you'll keep in mind, try something different. Take yourself out of the box. Make sure that you make the plate look pretty when you're doing a dish. And no matter what you do, just remember to do it in good taste.